Forbidden energy crackled down Frank Griffin's arm as his blood mingled with the alien runes, an ancient power awakening that would soon make the progenitors shiver. The human explorer pulled himself from the burning wreckage of his ship, Nebula's Fury, smoke billowing into the purple skies of Zorgax Prime. Frank winced, clutching the bleeding gash on his forearm. Insectoid aliens with gleaming black exoskeletons emerged from the dense alien jungle, towering trees with snake-like branches shivering behind them. The creatures chattered in an unknowable tongue, obsidian blades flashing. Their leader strode forward, his carapace battle-scarred. Compound eyes glinting, a menacing claw tapped the hilt of a wicked-looking scimitar as it gestured at Frank. "Trespasser, why have you invaded the sacred hunting grounds of the Sakari?" The alien clicked, words translated through Frank's datasphere implant. "Speak quickly, or your head will decorate the Lodge of Orin." Frank raised his hands, taking a step back from Orin's gleaming blade. "My name is Frank Griffin. I mean you no harm. My ship malfunctioned and I crashed here. I only seek shelter and materials to repair it." Orin's antennae twitched, his exoskeleton plates clacking. The alien warlord studied the smoking ruins of the Nebula's Fury, advanced human technology scattered across the violet dirt. Frank held his breath, the fate of his mission, and possibly humanity itself, hanging by a thread. Orin's next words would determine if Frank lived to fight another day, or died on an alien spear, far from home. The Sakari's eternal war with the Kran clan had already claimed countless lives. If Frank couldn't forge an alliance and repair his ship to return with reinforcements, humanity's critical trade route would fall, colonies would starve, and the flames of war would consume the galaxy. Orin lowered his scimitar, eyeing Frank with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "Your words ring true, Frank Griffin. We Sakari are not a cruel people. If you wish to live among us while you mend your vessel, we will grant you that." The warlord's exoskeleton clacked as he sheathed his blade. "But know this, our war with the treacherous Kran leaves little room for outsiders. Prove your worth, or the jungle will swallow you whole." As the days turned to weeks, Frank found himself immersed in the ways of the Sakari. He studied their language, customs, and the bitter conflict that had raged for generations. The Kran, it seemed, were a rival clan, hell-bent on conquering Zorgax Prime and exterminating the Sakari. Atrocities abounded on both sides, painting a grim tapestry of endless war. One misty morning Orin approached Frank, his battle-scarred carapace glistening with dew. "Come, Frank Griffin, there is something you must see." The warlord led Frank deep into the tangled jungle, to a place where the trees grew twisted and ancient, their branches intertwined like grasping fingers. There, nestled among the foliage, lay the crumbling remains of a vast temple complex. Cyclopean stones, etched with strange glyphs, rose from the earth, hinting at secrets long forgotten. "Behold," Orin clicked, "the ruins of the progenitors, the ones who came before." As they explored the vine-choked chambers, Orin spun a tale of the progenitors, an ancient race that had once held dominion over Zorgax Prime. "They were as gods," the warlord said, his voice tinged with reverence and fear. "Able to shape energy and matter as a potter molds clay. But they vanished eons ago, leaving only whispers and ruins." Frank ran his fingers over the alien glyphs, his mind racing. The technology here was beyond anything he'd seen, far surpassing even the most advanced human creations. If he could unravel its secrets... Orin's next words snapped Frank from his reverie. "The progenitor's power could be the key to ending our war with the Kran. Help me unlock the secrets of these ruins and we may yet see victory." Intrigued, Frank agreed. Together they delved deeper, Frank's keen intellect making short work of the complex alien systems. As they reached the heart of the ruins, a hidden chamber ground open, revealing a pulsing orb of blinding energy. Frank approached, transfixed. The orb seemed to call to him, alien patterns swirling in its depths. He reached out, fingers brushing the orb's surface. Blinding light erupted, engulfing Frank. It filled his veins, searing his mind and body. When it faded, the human stood unscathed but changed. Ancient progenitor runes pulsed beneath his skin, otherworldly energy crackling at his fingertips. Frank had been imbued with a fraction of the progenitor's power, the orb's energy mingling with his blood. Driven by a burning need to unravel the progenitor's secrets, Frank plunged deeper into the ancient ruins. His footsteps echoed through crumbling halls as he followed a twisting network of tunnels, the air growing thick with the weight of eons. Glyphs pulsed on the walls, hinting at arcane knowledge just out of reach. The passages narrowed, forcing Frank to squeeze through tight spaces, jagged stones scraping his skin. He emerged into a vast chamber, and his breath caught in his throat. There, suspended in the center of the room, hovered a massive orb of pure energy. It pulsated with an otherworldly rhythm, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Control panels and holographic displays surrounded the orb, covered in glyphs that shimmered with promise. Frank approached cautiously, his heart pounding. If he could just decipher these controls, harness the core's power, the Sakari would gain an unassailable edge over the Kran. Frank's fingers danced over the symbols, his mind racing as he tried to unravel their meaning. Patterns emerged, and he input a sequence, holding his breath. The orb thrummed, glowing brighter, and for a moment, Frank dared to hope. But then a deep rumble shook the chamber, dust raining from the ceiling. An alarm blared, ancient glyphs flashing red. Frank cursed, realizing he'd triggered some kind of fail-safe. The tunnels groaned, cracks spiderwebbing across the walls. Frank ran, stumbling as the ground heaved beneath him. Stones rained down, narrowly missing his head. He ducked and wove, heart in his throat as the tunnels collapsed behind him. With a final desperate lunge, Frank hurled himself through the entrance just as it crumbled, sealing the secrets of the progenitors behind a wall of rubble. Coughing in the dust, Frank pulled himself to his feet, his body aching. His head swam, the after-effects of the energy core's power still thrumming through his veins. A click made him freeze, the sound of weapons priming. A dozen Kran scouts emerged from the jungle, plasma rifles leveled at Frank's chest. He recognized the one in the lead, a vicious warrior with a gash across his carapace. The Kran chattered in their grating tongue, mandibles clacking. "The human who fights alongside the Sakari scum," the leader hissed. "You'll pay for your interference, soft skin." Frank raised his hands, his mind racing. He reached for his newfound powers, but they slipped through his grasp, exhausted by his encounter with the core. The Kran advanced, rifles humming with deadly energy. Plasma bolts scorched the air, but not from the Kran. Orin burst from the undergrowth, a war cry on his mandibles. Sakari warriors swarmed the clearing, energy blades flashing. The Kran scouts scattered, returning fire. In the chaos, plasma scorching the foliage around him, Frank dove for cover. Orin's forces clashed with the Kran, carapaces cracking under the onslaught. Frank scrambled away, keeping low. As he fled, a snippet of Kran chatter reached his ears, translated by his datasphere implant. A second sight, greater power, the key to victory. Frank's blood ran cold. The Kran had found another progenitor site, one even more powerful than this. He had to warn Orin, had to stop the Kran from harnessing that power. The fate of Zorgax Prime, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. But first he needed to master his own abilities to uncover the truth of the progenitors. Frank raced into the jungle, the sounds of battle fading behind him, a new urgency burning in his chest. The race for the progenitors' legacy had only just begun. With a fierce urgency burning in their chests, Frank and Orin plunged into the untamed wilderness of Zorgax Prime. The alien landscape stretched before them, a tapestry of vibrant hues and eerie beauty. Bioluminescent flora cast an ethereal glow, while the distant cries of otherworldly creatures echoed through the air. They trekked through treacherous swamps, the murky water bubbling and hissing with noxious gases. Frank's boots squelched in the muck as he pushed forward, his eyes watering from the acrid stench. Orin moved with a predatory grace, his exoskeleton glistening in the dim light. Jagged mountain ranges loomed on the horizon, their peaks shrouded in swirling mists. The pair scaled the rocky crags, their muscles burning with exertion. Frank's fingers dug into the rough stone, finding purchase where he could. Loose pebbles skittered down the cliff face, plummeting into the yawning void below. In the dense forests, ancient trees towered overhead, their twisting branches draped in curtains of shimmering vines. Bioluminescent fungi carpeted the forest floor, pulsing with an eerie rhythm. Strange insectoid creatures scuttled through the undergrowth, their multifaceted eyes glinting in the shadows. As they journeyed deeper into the wilderness, Frank and Orin stumbled upon the remnants of the Progenitors' civilization. Crumbling roadways paved with a smooth, opalescent material wound through the landscape. Towering aqueducts encrusted with glowing lichen arched across yawning chasms. Vine-covered structures rose from the earth, their once sleek lines blurred by the passage of time. Frank ran his fingers over the alien architecture, marveling at the advanced technology that had withstood the ravages of the ages. "The Progenitors were light years ahead of anything we've ever seen," he murmured, his voice tinged with awe. Orin clicked his mandibles in agreement. "And now their power is within our grasp. We must not falter." As they neared the coordinates of the second site, a flicker of movement caught Frank's eye. He tensed, reaching for his plasma pistol, but Orin held up a claw. "Wait," the Sakari warrior hissed. "I sense no danger." From the dense foliage, a group of insectoid beings emerged, their carapaces weathered and scarred. They carried primitive spears and wore woven garments adorned with intricate patterns. One of the beings, a wizened elder with a curved staff, stepped forward. "I am Zaxxon," the elder said, his voice a rasping whisper. "You have journeyed far, outsiders. What brings you to our hidden village?" Frank and Orin exchanged a glance, weighing their options. Finally, Frank spoke. "We seek the Progenitors' vault, said to contain the key to their technology. We believe it may be the only way to end the war with the Kran." Zaxxon's compound eyes glittered with ancient knowledge. "The vault," he murmured. "Yes, we have guarded its location for generations, but the path is treacherous, and the vault can only be opened by one who possesses the Progenitors' power." Frank's heart raced, the runes beneath his skin pulsing with energy. I think I may be able to open it," he said, his voice trembling. "I've been imbued with a fraction of their power." Zaxxon studied Frank, his antennae twitching. "Then perhaps there is hope," the elder said. "I will lead you to the vault, but be warned, the journey will be fraught with danger. Ancient traps and fearsome creatures guard the way." Frank and Orin nodded, their faces set with grim determination. "We're ready," Orin said, his claws flexing. "The Kran cannot be allowed to reach the vault first." As Zaxxon led them towards the labyrinthine cave system, Frank steeled himself for the trials ahead. The fate of Zorgax Prime, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on their shoulders. They had to succeed, no matter the cost. The entrance to the caves yawned before them, a gaping maw of darkness. The air grew thick and heavy, the stench of decay and ancient secrets wafting from the depths. Frank's heart pounded in his chest as they stepped into the unknown, the light from Zaxxon's bioluminescent staff, casting eerie shadows on the rock walls. Stalactites and stalagmites jutted from the floor and ceiling like jagged teeth, ready to impale the unwary. The tunnels twisted and turned, branching off into a dizzying maze. Zaxxon navigated the labyrinth with the surety of one who had walked these paths countless times before. As they ventured deeper, the walls began to change. Strange, pulsating veins of energy ran through the rock, casting a sickly glow. Frank could feel the power emanating from them, a cold, ancient presence that set his teeth on edge. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the tunnels, sending shivers down Frank's spine. Orin tensed, his claws clicking against his plasma rifle. "We're not alone," the Sakari warrior hissed, his eyes scanning the darkness. From the shadows, a monstrous creature emerged, its body a twisted amalgamation of insectoid and reptilian features. Razor-sharp claws glinted in the dim light, and a pair of venomous fangs dripped with ichor. The beast let out a deafening roar, its eyes glowing with a feral hunger. Frank raised his plasma pistol, his hands shaking. He could feel the progenitor energy surging through his veins, begging to be unleashed. But he hesitated, unsure if he could control the raw power. The creature lunged, its claws slashing through the air. Orin leapt forward, his plasma rifle spitting bolts of searing energy. The beast howled in pain, but kept coming, its hide smouldering with each hit. Frank gritted his teeth, pushing past his fear. He reached deep within himself, tapping into the well of alien energy that thrummed through his body. His eyes blazed with an otherworldly light as he thrust out his hand, a bolt of pure power surging from his palm. The creature was engulfed in a blinding flash, its body disintegrating into ash. The air crackled with residual energy, the stench of ozone thick in Frank's nostrils. Orin stared at Frank, his compound eyes wide with awe. "The power of the progenitors," the warrior breathed. "Incredible." Frank looked down at his hands, still thrumming with energy. He could feel the power coursing through him, a heady rush that left him breathless. But with that power came a sense of responsibility, a weight that settled heavy on his shoulders. Zaxxon urged them forward, his staff casting a flickering light. "We must hurry," the elder said, his voice tight with urgency. "The vault is close, but the dangers only grow greater." Frank and Orin pressed on, their senses heightened, their weapons at the ready. The tunnels seemed to close in around them, the darkness pressing against their skin like a living thing. Every shadow held the promise of a new threat, every sound a potential attack. As they rounded a corner, the tunnel opened up into a vast chamber. In the center, a pulsating orb of energy hovered, suspended in a web of glowing filaments. Frank's breath caught in his throat, the runes on his skin burning with a fierce intensity. "The vault," Zaxxon whispered, his voice trembling with reverence. "The key to the progenitor's power." Frank stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the orb calling to him, the energy within it resonating with the power that flowed through his veins. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. But as he reached out to touch the orb, a cold laugh echoed through the chamber. Frank spun around, his blood running cold. There, standing at the entrance to the vault, was a group of Cran warriors, their plasma rifles aimed directly at Frank's heart. The Cran leader, a massive insectoid with a battle-scarred carapace, stepped forward, his mandibles clicking with cruel amusement. "Did you really think you could beat us here, human?" the warrior sneered. "The power of the progenitors will be ours, and with it, the galaxy itself." Frank's mind raced, desperately searching for a way out. They were outnumbered and outgunned, trapped in the heart of the progenitor's vault. But he couldn't let the Cran win, couldn't let their twisted ambitions plunge the galaxy into darkness. He glanced at Orin, seeing the same fierce determination in the Sakari warrior's eyes. They had come too far to fail now. Whatever happened, they would face it together, united in their fight against the Cran's tyranny. Frank stepped into the massive cavern, his boots crunching on the rocky floor. Towering stalagmites loomed overhead, their jagged forms glistening with moisture. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, bathing the chamber in an eerie, pulsating glow. The air was thick and musty, heavy with the weight of ages. At the center of the cavern stood an ancient progenitor construct, a towering monolith that thrummed with power. Intricate glyphs and advanced technology covered its surface, hinting at secrets long forgotten. As Frank approached, he could feel his progenitor-imbued powers resonating with the monolith, a tingling sensation that raced up his spine. Suddenly a blinding light erupted from the construct. Frank shielded his eyes as a holographic interface materialized before him, casting an ethereal glow across the cavern. A booming voice filled the air, echoing off the stone walls. "I am the progenitor AI, guardian of the vault," the voice intoned, its timbre deep and resonant. "For eons I have waited for one worthy of inheriting our legacy, one who possesses the power and the wisdom to wield it responsibly." Frank stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "I am Frank Griffin of Earth," he said, his voice steady, despite the awe that threatened to overwhelm him. "I seek the knowledge and technology of the progenitors, to bring an end to the war that ravages this world. The AI seemed to consider his words, the holographic interface shimmering with unreadable symbols. The Progenitors were once a great civilization spanning the stars, it said, its voice tinged with a hint of sadness. But we became consumed by our own power and ambition. The advanced AI and nanotech we created turned against us, leading to our downfall. Frank listened intently, his mind racing with the implications of the AI's words. The Progenitors had been destroyed by their own creations, a cautionary tale that resonated all too clearly with humanity's own struggles with advanced technology. I was tasked with hiding the Progenitors' knowledge and technology, the AI continued, until a worthy successor emerged, one who could demonstrate the intellect, creativity, and moral fortitude necessary to wield such power responsibly. Frank squared his shoulders, a sense of purpose settling over him like a mantle. "I am ready to face whatever challenges you have for me," he said, his voice ringing with determination. The AI's interface shimmered, and a series of complex puzzles and moral dilemmas materialized before Frank. He dove into the challenges, his mind racing as he grappled with the intricacies of progenitor technology and the weighty ethical questions posed by the AI. Time seemed to blur as Frank navigated the challenges, his brow furrowed in concentration. With each puzzle solved, each moral quandary untangled, he could feel his understanding of the Progenitor's power growing, along with the weight of responsibility that came with it. Orin and Zaxxon watched from the sidelines, their eyes wide with awe as Frank worked. They could sense the gravity of the moment, the potential for change that hung in the air like a palpable force. Just as Frank was on the verge of unlocking the final secret, a massive explosion rocked the chamber. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling, and the ground heaved beneath their feet. Frank spun around, his heart in his throat. There, standing at the entrance to the cavern, was Zorgax, the ruthless Kran warlord. His exoskeleton gleamed in the dim light, and his compound eyes glittered with malice. Behind him, a horde of Kran warriors poured into the chamber, their plasma rifles at the ready. "Did you really think you could keep this power from us, human?" Zorgax hissed, his mandibles clicking with cruel amusement. "The Progenitor's legacy belongs to the Kran, and we will take it by force." Frank's jaw tightened as he reached for his plasma pistol. Beside him, Orin and Zaxxon readied their own weapons, their faces grim with determination. The final battle for the fate of Zorgax Prime had begun, and the stakes could not be higher. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as the Kran opened fire, their weapons spitting deadly energy. Frank dove for cover behind a stalagmite, his heart pounding in his chest. He returned fire, his plasma pistol bucking in his grip as he sent a barrage of bolts towards the advancing Kran. Orin and Zaxxon fought beside him, their weapons flashing in the dim light. The Sakari warrior's exoskeleton was pockmarked with scorch marks, but he fought on with unwavering determination. Zaxxon's staff crackled with energy as he sent waves of force towards the Kran, knocking them back like rag dolls. But the Kran kept coming, their numbers seeming endless. For every warrior that fell, 2 more took their place, their plasma rifles spitting death and destruction. Frank gritted his teeth as he fired again and again, the acrid stench of ozone filling his nostrils. In the midst of the chaos, Frank's mind raced. He had to complete the AI's final challenge, had to unlock the vault before the Kran could claim its power for themselves. But how could he focus on the puzzle with death raining down around him? Suddenly, a plasma bolt slammed into the stalagmite beside him, showering him with razor-sharp shards of rock. Frank felt a searing pain in his shoulder, and he looked down to see blood seeping through his torn jacket. He gritted his teeth, pushing the pain aside. He had to finish this, had to see it through to the end. With a fierce determination burning in his chest, Frank turned back to the holographic interface, his fingers flying over the glowing symbols as he raced to complete the final challenge. The battle raged around him, plasma bolts scorching the air, the stench of burning flesh and melted rock thick in his nostrils. But Frank was lost in the puzzle, his mind focused solely on the task at hand. He could feel the weight of the Progenitor's power thrumming through his veins. could sense the vault's secrets tantalizingly close, just out of reach. Zorgax's cruel laughter echoed through the chamber as he advanced on Frank, his plasma rifle leveled at the human's chest. "You failed, soft skin," the Cran warlord sneered. "The power of the progenitors will be mine, and your pathetic species will be ground beneath the might of the Cran Empire." But Frank barely heard him, his attention absorbed by the final piece of the puzzle sliding into place. With a fierce cry of triumph, he slammed his hand down on the holographic interface, his eyes blazing with the power of the progenitors. The vault rumbled to life, ancient gears grinding and mechanisms whirring. A blinding light filled the chamber, emanating from the slowly opening doors of the vault. Zorgax's eyes widened, his mandibles clicking in disbelief as he realized that he had been outmaneuvered. Frank stood before the vault, his body wreathed in energy, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. He could feel the power of the progenitors coursing through him, a raging torrent of knowledge and potential that threatened to overwhelm his senses. But he held firm, his mind clear and focused. He knew that this power was not to be wielded lightly, that it came with a responsibility to use it wisely for the betterment of all. With a deep breath, Frank stepped forward, ready to embrace his destiny and the challenges that lay ahead. With a fierce cry of determination, Frank slammed his hand onto the control panel, his mind racing as he navigated the ancient progenitor systems. The AI's final challenge unfolded before him, a dizzying array of complex equations and moral quandaries that tested the very limits of his intellect and resolve. Sweat poured down Frank's brow as he input commands, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. Around him the battle raged on, plasma bolts scorching the air and the cries of the wounded echoing off the chamber walls. Orin and the Sakari warriors fought with a savage ferocity, their primitive weapons clashing against the Cran's advanced technology. They moved with a fluid grace, their exoskeletons glistening with sweat and blood as they dodged and weaved, striking at the Cran with a relentless fury. Zaxxon, his ancient eyes glinting with a primal power, raised his staff high. A swarm of bioengineered insects burst forth, a seething mass of chitinous bodies and razor-sharp mandibles. They descended upon the Cran like a living tide, crawling into their armor and wreaking havoc on their advanced systems. The Cran warriors screamed in frustration and pain, their weapons sparking and sputtering as the insects chewed through delicate circuitry. Frank's heart pounded in his chest as he input the final command. The control panel thrummed with power, and a blinding light filled the chamber. Frank felt a surge of energy course through his body, ancient progenitor technology interfacing with his own biology. His mind expanded, a vast network of knowledge and power unfolding before him. Through the connection, Frank saw the true scope of the progenitor's legacy. Scattered across Zorgax Prime, hidden beneath the surface, lay a vast network of advanced technology, all interconnected and waiting for activation. A fail-safe mechanism, designed to protect the planet from the very nanotech and AI that had led to the progenitor's downfall. Orbital defense platforms, long dormant, stirred to life, their immense forms drifting in the void above the planet, but activating them required a tremendous amount of energy, more than Frank alone could generate. He struggled to maintain the connection, his body trembling with the strain. Orin, seeing Frank's plight, disengaged from the battle and rushed to his side. The Sakari warrior placed his clawed hand on the control panel, adding his own strength to the effort. Zaxxon, too, joined them, his ancient wisdom and power flowing into the system. Together they poured their energy into the progenitor network, drawing upon the very geothermal forces that pulsed beneath the planet's surface. The chamber shook with the force of their efforts, stalactites shattering and crashing to the ground. Frank felt the energy of the planet's core surging through him, a searing, agonizing power that threatened to consume him entirely. But he held on, gritting his teeth against the pain, knowing that the fate of Zorgax Prime and the entire galaxy hung in the balance. With a final, desperate push, the defense network activated. High above the planet, the orbital platforms glowed with brilliant energy. Beams of incandescent light rained down upon the Cran forces, their advanced weapons and armor disintegrating under the onslaught. The Cran warriors scattered, their formation broken, their technology failing them in the face of the Progenitors' ultimate weapon. In the chamber, Frank, Orin, and Zaxxon collapsed to their knees, their energy spent. The battle still raged around them, but the tide had turned. The Cran, their advanced technology neutralized, fell back before the renewed onslaught of the Sakari warriors. Frank struggled to his feet, his body aching with the after-effects of channeling such immense power. He looked to Orin and Zaxxon, seeing the same exhaustion and determination etched into their alien features. They had done it, activated the Progenitors' failsafe, and turned the tide of the battle. But the war was far from over. Zorgax, his eyes burning with rage and desperation, rallied his remaining forces for a final, desperate charge. The Cran warlord knew that if he failed here, the Cran Empire's ambitions would crumble to dust. He would not go down without a fight, even if it meant his own destruction and the annihilation of everything he had fought to achieve. Frank readied himself for the final confrontation, the power of the Progenitors still thrumming through his veins. The battle for the future of Zorgax Prime and the galaxy itself had reached its climax, and only one side would emerge victorious. With a fierce cry of triumph, Frank, Orin, and Zaxxon seized the opportunity presented by the Cran's disarray. They burst from the underground chamber, energy crackling at Frank's fingertips as he summoned the power of the Progenitors. Glowing barriers sprang into existence, deflecting the sizzling plasma bolts fired by the remaining Cran warriors. Frank thrust out his hands, sending searing projectiles of pure energy hurtling towards the insectoid soldiers, blasting them off their feet. Orin and Zaxxon leapt into the fray, their exoskeletons glistening in the chaos. Orin's claws flashed, ripping through Cran armor like paper as he spun and dodged with a warrior's grace. Zaxxon's staff whirled, the ancient Sakari weapon crushing chitin and bone with each mighty blow. The two aliens fought back to back, a whirlwind of savagery and skill. Smoke and screams filled the air as the trio battled their way through the Cran ranks. Frank's heart pounded in his chest, adrenaline surging through his veins. He could feel the progenitor energy thrumming beneath his skin, a wild, exhilarating rush of power. With each blast of energy, each shimmering barrier, he drove the Cran back, carving a path to freedom. At last, they burst from the caves, stumbling into the blinding light of Zorgax Prime's sun. Frank shielded his eyes, blinking away the spots that danced in his vision. As his sight adjusted, he gasped, staring in awe at the world that stretched before them. The once barren landscape had been transformed, the dull greys and browns replaced by a riot of color. Lush vegetation carpeted the ground, alien flowers blooming in dazzling hues of purple, blue, and crimson. Towering trees with iridescent leaves reached for the sky, their trunks entwined with glowing vines. The air hummed with the sounds of strange wildlife, trills and chirps that seemed to celebrate the planet's rebirth. Frank turned to Orin and Zaxxon, his eyes wide with wonder. "The defense network," he breathed. "It's not just defending the planet, it's healing it." Orin nodded, his compound eyes glinting with emotion. "The Progenitor's legacy," he clicked, "is not destruction, but creation." Zaxxon leaned heavily on his staff, his ancient exoskeleton battered but unbowed. "And now," he rasped, "that legacy is ours to protect." The trio set out across the transformed landscape, marveling at the wonders that now surrounded them. The journey back to the Sakari village was one of discovery and renewal, each step revealing a world reborn. When they at last reached the settlement, they were greeted by a scene of jubilation. The Sakari swarmed around them, their chittering cries of joy filling the air. They danced and sang, their primitive dwellings adorned with the glowing flowers of the new world. Children scampered between the adults, their carapaces gleaming in the sun. In the days that followed, the Sakari set to work rebuilding their society, their efforts infused with a newfound sense of hope and purpose. They incorporated the knowledge of the Progenitors into their daily lives, their tools and machines now humming with an advanced alien energy. The village blossomed, a shining beacon of what the planet could become. But even as the Sakari celebrated their victory, Frank knew that their struggles were far from over. The activation of the defense network had sent ripples through the cosmos, drawing the attention of other alien races. Some sought to claim the progenitors' power for their own, driven by greed and ambition. Others feared what the technology could mean, seeing it as a threat to their own way of life. Frank pored over the data streaming in from the orbital platforms, his brow furrowed with concern. He knew that Zorgax Prime was now a target, a prize to be won or a danger to be eliminated. The thought of new enemies descending upon the planet filled him with a grim determination. He gathered Orin, Zaxxon, and a team of the brightest Sakari engineers, sequestering themselves in the depths of the Progenitors' ruins. There, amidst the ancient technology and glowing glyphs, they began to work, seeking to unravel the secrets of the Progenitors and find a way to defend their world. Days turned into weeks as they labored, the glow of holographic displays casting an eerie light over their faces. They delved into the Progenitors' archives, their minds racing to keep up with the flood of information. Advanced propulsion systems, energy manipulation techniques, even the secrets of interdimensional travel, all lay at their fingertips, a treasure trove of knowledge beyond their wildest dreams. But as they dug deeper, a new realization began to dawn on Frank and his team. The Progenitors' technology was only a part of their legacy. The true key to their greatness lay in their wisdom, in the hard lessons they had learned from their own rise and fall. The Progenitors had been consumed by their own power, blinded by their own brilliance. In the end, their technology had turned against them, leading to their downfall. It was a sobering reminder of the dangers that came with such knowledge, a warning that echoed through the ages. Frank leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes as he stared at the glowing screens before him. The weight of responsibility settled heavy on his shoulders, a burden he had never asked for, but couldn't escape. He knew that the fate of Zorgax Prime and perhaps the entire galaxy rested in their hands. They had to find a way to use the Progenitors' technology wisely, to create a future that would not repeat the mistakes of the past. Orin placed a clawed hand on Frank's shoulder, his compound eyes glinting with understanding. "We will find a way," the Sakari warrior clicked, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "Together." Frank nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. He turned back to the screens, his fingers flying over the controls with renewed purpose. They had a long road ahead of them, but with the knowledge of the Progenitors and the strength of their bond, he knew they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The secrets of the cosmos awaited, and Frank and his team would meet them head-on, armed with the wisdom of the past and the hope of a brighter future. Frank pored over the glowing holographic displays, his brow furrowed in concentration. The secrets of the Progenitor technology seemed to unfold before him, a dizzying array of advanced propulsion systems, energy manipulation techniques, and even the tantalizing hints of interdimensional travel. The knowledge was exhilarating but also humbling, a reminder of the vast, untapped potential that lay hidden within the universe. Suddenly, an urgent beep cut through the quiet hum of the Progenitor systems. Frank's eyes widened as he read the incoming message, a distress call from a nearby star system. The Eldari, a peaceful alien civilization, were under attack by the Orcs, a technologically advanced race that had detected the activation of the Progenitor technology on Zorgax Prime. "Orin, Zaxxon, get in here," Frank called, his voice tight with tension. The two aliens hurried into the room, their expressions growing grave as they read the message. "The Orcs," Orin clicked, his mandibles twitching with agitation. "They seek to claim the Progenitor technology for themselves, to establish dominion over the entire sector." Zaxxon's compound eyes glittered with resolve. "We cannot stand idly by while innocent lives are at stake." Frank nodded, his jaw set. "We have to help the Eldari to stop the Orcs' advance." He turned back to the holographic displays, his mind racing. "The knowledge we've gained from the Progenitor repository, we can use it to construct a starship, one equipped with advanced defenses and weaponry." The trio worked feverishly, their hands flying over the controls as they poured their combined knowledge and skills into the creation of the prototype vessel. Time seemed to blur as they labored, the urgency of their mission driving them forward. At last the ship was ready, a sleek silver craft that thrummed with barely contained power. Frank, Orin, and Zaxxon boarded the vessel, their hearts pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. They knew that the fate of the Eldari, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on their shoulders. As they set out for the Eldari system, the vastness of space seemed to close in around them. Uncharted regions stretched out before them, filled with the dangers of cosmic phenomena and hostile alien encounters. Frank's hands tightened on the controls as he navigated through asteroid fields and past the swirling vortexes of black holes. Suddenly the ship shuddered as a blast of energy slammed into its shields. Frank's eyes widened as he saw the sleek black ships of the Orcs darting through the void, their weapons cutting through the Eldari's defenses with ruthless efficiency. Without hesitation, Frank threw the ship into the fray, drawing upon his progenitor-enhanced abilities to guide the vessel through the chaos of the battle. The ship's advanced technology proved to be a match for the Orcs' firepower, and Frank's tactical skills gave them a crucial advantage. As they fought, Frank and his crew worked to evacuate the Eldari civilians, providing cover for their retreat. The Eldari ships, elegant crafts of shimmering silver, fled before the onslaught of the Orcs, their hulls scorched and battered. In the midst of the battle, a chilling realization dawned on Frank. The Orcs weren't just seeking to conquer the Eldari, they were seeking to assimilate their unique genetic code, to augment their own abilities and become even more powerful. The implications were staggering. If the Orcs succeeded, their power would grow exponentially, and their conquest would spread like a plague across the stars. The fate of not just the Eldari, but countless other civilizations hung in the balance. As the battle raged on, Frank's mind raced, searching for a solution. He knew that the choices he made in the coming days would shape the course of the galaxy itself. The weight of that responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, but he refused to back down. He would fight not just for the Eldari, but for the future of all sentient life. The starship shuddered as another blast slammed into its shields and warning lights flashed across the console. Frank gritted his teeth, his fingers flying over the controls as he pushed the ship to its limits. The fate of the galaxy hung by a thread, and he would not let it slip through his grasp. Frank's hands flew over the holographic interface, the pulsating light casting an eerie glow over his face. The Orcs fleet swarmed around them, a seething mass of black metal and searing energy. Explosions rocked the prototype starship as the enemy's weapons found their mark. Alarms blaring and sparks cascading from ruptured conduits. "We can't hold them off much longer," Orin shouted over the din of battle, his claws deftly manipulating the ship's controls. "We need a new plan." Frank gritted his teeth, his mind racing. The progenitor knowledge swirled through his thoughts, a kaleidoscope of advanced technology and cosmic secrets. Suddenly, an idea crystallized, a desperate gambit that could turn the tide of the battle. "The nebula," Frank said, his voice tight with tension. "If we can lure the Orcs fleet inside, we can use the progenitor technology to create a massive feedback loop, amplifying the nebula's energy to tear their ships apart." Zaxxon's compound eyes widened, his antennae twitching with concern. "The nebula is sacred to the Eldari," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "It is home to the Exari, a sentient energy being we revere as a god. To use the progenitor technology in this way would mean its destruction and the desecration of our most holy site." Frank's heart clenched, the weight of the decision bearing down on him. He understood the gravity of what he was proposing, the terrible cost it would entail. But as he watched the Orc ships tearing through the Eldari defenses, he knew that there was no other choice. "I'm sorry, Zaxxon," Frank said, his voice heavy with regret. "But if we don't stop the Orcs here and now, their conquest will consume the entire galaxy. The sacrifice of the Exari could save countless lives." Zaxxon's eyes met Frank's, a silent understanding passing between them. The Eldari scientist nodded, his exoskeleton plates clicking softly. "Do what you must," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Frank turned back to the interface, his fingers dancing over the controls. He reached out with his mind, Tapping into the progenitor technology that thrummed through the ship's systems, he could feel the power of the ancient race flowing through him, a conduit for their immense knowledge and abilities. With a deft series of commands, Frank sent out a pulse of energy, a tantalizing lure that caught the attention of the Vorix fleet. Like a swarm of angry hornets, the black ships turned, their engines flaring as they pursued the prototype starship towards the shimmering nebula. As they crossed the threshold into the swirling clouds of gas and dust, Frank felt a presence brush against his mind, a vast and ancient consciousness that seemed to permeate the very fabric of the nebula. The Ixari, he realized, a being of pure energy and unfathomable wisdom. For a moment Frank hesitated, doubt and guilt gnawing at his resolve. But as the Vorix ships closed in, their weapons charging for a final devastating salvo, he knew that there was no turning back. With a silent apology to the Ixari and the Eldari, Frank activated the progenitor technology, pouring every ounce of his will and power into the ship's systems. The nebula began to glow, a blinding radiance that grew brighter and brighter with each passing second. The Vorix ships, caught off guard by the sudden shift in energy, faltered in their pursuit. But it was too late. The feedback loop had begun, a cascading reaction that tore through the nebula like a cosmic shockwave. The Vorix ships shuddered and buckled, their hulls ripping apart as the energy wave consumed them. Explosions blossomed in the void, silent bursts of fire and debris that scattered across the stars. The Vorix fleet, once an unstoppable force of conquest and assimilation, was reduced to a field of shattered remnants and drifting wreckage. In the heart of the nebula, the Ixari let out a keening cry, a sound that reverberated through Frank's very soul. He felt the being's anguish and despair, a profound sense of loss that threatened to overwhelm him. The Ixari's essence began to unravel, dissipating into the cosmic winds, as the progenitor technology tore it asunder. Frank slumped back in his chair, his body shaking with exhaustion and emotion. Tears streamed down his face as he watched the last vestiges of the Ixari fade away, a godlike being sacrificed for the greater good of the galaxy. Orin placed a comforting claw on Frank's shoulder, his own eyes glistening with moisture. "You did what had to be done," the Sakari warrior said, his voice thick with understanding. "The Ixari's sacrifice will not be forgotten." If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.